advances to the Final Four.
Shout out Chillinois Basketball Podcast.
Shout out to Chillinois Podcast.
Shout out at Chillinois Podcast.
Shout out Chillinois Basketball, man.
Welcome back to the Chillinois Basketball Podcast. I'm Chase Swearingen, and with me, as always, is Noah Morgano. But today we have a little bit of a treat for you guys. We're bringing in another guest, the second guest we've had on this podcast. This time an Illinois insider, Sahil Mittal. We're excited to have you here, man. He's the assistant sports editor for the Daily Illini, which is the newspaper for the campus of Illinois. He's a student at the university, and he's very close with the basketball team. Sahil, it's a pleasure to have you with us, man. Thanks for agreeing to do this. But firstly, if you want to just introduce yourself, tell us what your job is. I know you're very close with the team, so we're excited to talk to you about the team.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me on. I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself. So my name is Sahil. I'm from the Chicago suburbs area, and I got into Illinois basketball because of all the sports media work I did in high school before I got to Illinois. So I was really involved with my high school's, TV broadcasts program, and I had like the weekly sports show for that program and would cover all the sports on campus. And then I also worked for the Chicago Bulls G League team, which I still do today, doing like social media, PR, marketing. And so when I got to Illinois, I really wanted to continue doing that like journalism media thing, even though it wasn't my major, just because it was a big passion of mine. And so when I saw we had a campus newspaper, I was like, okay, this is something new. I've really done like more video, social media stuff, and now I'm going to try my hand at writing. And so as a freshman, I got hired, unpaid. I was writing about women's tennis at Illinois, which was honestly like I played tennis, so it was kind of a fun experience. Obviously, I wanted to get to basketball eventually, and at the end of my freshman year, I ended up getting put on the basketball beat. And my first experience covering Illinois men's basketball was actually at the NBA Draft Combine in 2024. So was able to talk to Coleman, Terrence Shannon Jr. And then from there, I did NBA Summer League that year with like Marcus Damask, again, TJ Coleman, or not Coleman that year because he ended up withdrawing. Quincy Guerrier was there. And then I ended up doing all of last season covering the team, mostly home games. We went to a couple road games, went to March Madness, which was really sweet. And then kind of heading into this year, did the same thing, covered the combine, went to Summer League, and then covering the team this season. We're traveling a lot more, which is really cool, especially as a student paper. So every home game we've been to Nashville, New York City. We're going to Philadelphia in a few days, and then we'll be at UCLA, and probably a couple others before the year closes out. But yeah, no, it's been a really cool experience just to, be able to get into Illinois basketball so early in college and have the opportunity to cover the team since my sophomore year.
That's awesome, man. So it sounds like you're really close with the team. Like I said before, we appreciate you bringing your insight to this podcast for us. I know you mentioned you were at some of the games, which is a quick, funny story I have. I was at the bragging rights game. I was with my dad and a friend, and I was actually pointing you out on the court because I had messaged you off the Chillinois podcast account, and I was like, I messaged that guy. He's the assistant sports editor for the Illini. And then as we walked out to go to our seats, as I was explaining to my dad and my friend, literally 2 seconds later after I said that, you messaged me back and were like, I'd love to be on the podcast. So it was just a great stroke of luck that you messaged us back, and I know I reached out to you, so I appreciate you getting back to me. And but we'll get into the Illini, which is the theme of this podcast. They did beat the Missouri Tigers in the bragging rights game last week. We've had about a week off, and they play tomorrow against Southern University. Not necessarily a huge test, but we will go over it like we preview every game. Noah, I'll start with you. Do you have any expectations for this Southern team? I know it's kind of a cupcake matchup. I don't think anybody's expecting this to be close, but you don't want to overlook this game, especially right before Big Ten season starts.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to overlook it. I mean, I don't see a world where we lose this game. I was saying in the pregame, Southern, not much of a university, more of a direction, more of a geographical location on a map. So I'm not really sure what that's all about. I don't know what Southern what. I mean, where are they? What state are they in?
I don't
Just
know.
Southern?
I think they're in Georgia, but I don't know off the top of my head.
You wouldn't
Southern
know. I mean, it'd
University,
be
A&M. Oh, I'm sorry. They're in Louisiana, Baton Rouge.
okay. Louisiana. I mean, that is pretty southern if you ask me, but
Yeah.
it's going to be a good game. I think there's going to be one of those games where Illinois is really going to try and show the league, the Big Ten, like, hey, we had a couple hiccups, but we're going to start taking things pretty serious. Merck's head isn't in Serbia anymore. We don't have to worry about that. It seems to be in Champaign, or at least close enough to Champaign. Um, and I would be very curious, like I don't know if we'd mentioned it yet, but Petrovic, this is the game that Petrovic needs to play. He needs to get at least 7 minutes. I mean, that's not asking too much. 7 minutes in a game where you're probably going to end up winning by 40 or 50. I mean, I do have the shirt on. I want the Balkan block back. I hope those guys are sitting behind the bench again in those amazing suits, those jumpsuits. But I think this will be a perfect tune-up game. Get get Brandon Lee some minutes, get him out on the court, get him fresh, get the post game pictures. Everybody's having fun. Maybe there'll be some kind of trophy that they can smash because that's the new thing, by the way. Tommy and Big Z specifically wanted to smash the bragging rights trophy. Like, no, dude, you can't smash every single trophy we win. That's not how sports works. You can't smash everything you want. But no, I'm excited for it. I think it'll be a good game and a big game for the Balkans.
And then Sahil, I said to you before the podcast, and Noah just reiterated, we'd like to see Petrovic and Brandon Lee going or get going. You're closer with the team than we are. Is there anything to be said for why they haven't played a ton so far? I know Brad said in a comment, it's nothing that Petro hasn't or has done. I think more of it has to just do with Keaton being such an exceptional player as a guard right now. But what are you expecting for the Southern game, and do you think we see either of those players get on the court a little bit more?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that nobody expected Keaton to be this good coming into the year. And the fact that he's kind of risen to that, like, one of the best players on the team sort of stage so quickly has kind of moved Petrovic to the back burner, which is interesting as a 22-year-old who was probably not expecting this to be his role at all this year. I also think it has to do with just matchups. I think they've played more physical teams in Tennessee and Missouri, and just like he's a smaller guard who hasn't really been able to finish around the rim all that well. I mean, you saw that at UConn. He blew some layups. I feel like that's just kind of been the story of any gameplay he's gotten so far this year. Like, yes, he can pass, but when he gets to the rim, he's got to be able to finish, and like that's just been a weak point so far. And I know Brad mentioned that just matchups have been a little bit of an issue when it comes to that, or why he's played more Keaton or put Brandon in for a couple of minutes here and there. But yeah, no, would love to see him play a little bit more. I honestly thought he would get more minutes at the end of the Mizzou game. Thought he would come in a little bit earlier when you're up 25-30 with 8 minutes to go. Um, get him in there instead of waiting till a few minutes later. But yeah, no, definitely want to see him out on the floor more. Brandon Lee would be great. I think that, early on in the season there was a lot of hype around his name, and then that kind of faded pretty quickly once Keaton started going up. So those two guys out there, and then also just in general, I don't want to see a UTRGV sort of game where they've had a few days off with Christmas, and or even like an early Colgate game where it was pretty tight up until the end of the first half. They've had a few days off. I know Kylan was in Miami, so let's see how they come back. But just not getting off to a slow start has got to be the biggest thing in this game. You don't want to be stagnant early.
I agree with you there, and it's funny. I hadn't actually checked the game time until just a second ago when you mentioned that Colgate like midday game. Noah and I absolutely despise these like middle of the day Big Ten games. We just feel like the Illini all like historically the Illini have always come out weak in the middle of the day Big Ten or middle of the day just random off games. So really looking to see if they can come out hot like they did against Missouri. The defense wasn't exceptional against Missouri early on, but it really stuck together and they gelled in the second half a lot. So we'll see if they can give them that punch early on. Game is at 2 p.m., so unfortunately it's one of those midday ones that we don't like. It will be on the Big Ten Network. And then speaking of Big Ten, the Illini get right back into Big Ten play after this game against Southern. They'll have Penn State on the 3rd of January. So just 4 days, I'm sorry, 5 days later. Um, but this is kind of the crunch period of the season, and that's why we brought you on here, Sahil, because we wanted to do more of a roundtable discussion about what we've liked so far, what we're going to expect from this Illini team, because this is the really important part of the season. Obviously, people give non-conference a lot of they look at the non-conference, depending on how you schedule it, as really important or really unimportant. I think the Illini's non-conference schedule is pretty important this year, and they did a pretty good job. They did well. They went 4-3 against those mid-major, or I'm sorry, high major teams. So I was excited about that. But now every team is a high major team. You're playing everybody in the Big Ten, and I know they've split the season series early on. They're 1-1 after Ohio State and the Nebraska game. But we're just going to get into that roundtable discussion kind of. Firstly, what have you liked from the Illini so far, at least in the early games non-conference, and what do you think that means for them going forward into the Big Ten?
You know, it's a little bit hard to say what I've liked just because it's been so almost bipolar in how
Mhm.
they've played. I think obviously when the offense is rolling, you like that. When the defense is energetic, you like that. But it's almost like you just need to see more consistency out of this team. There just hasn't been enough time, I'd say, to, pinpoint something that I think is going to be super strong the rest of the season because who knows? Maybe you could have a situation like last year where, they're making shots for a period of time, and then they just can't shoot the rest of the season. Or the defense is, good here and there, but it just kind of lacks the rest of the year. I think obviously Keaton has been a super bright spot. Just his consistency individually, his poise, I think, has been just so impressive, even not being as strong as like, you know, Kylan or any other older guards, like he's still found a way to be super effective. I think that's been really impressive. I think Z has been super impressive, kind of stepping up when Tommy's been a little bit weak and a little bit passive. I think obviously that UConn game wasn't great for Z, but otherwise just the energy he's brought on the defensive end and has been really great. I think in terms of improvement, rebounding, you gotta get your big guys on the glass a little bit more. They've shown that they can when they put the work in, but it's almost been like is is Brad pushing them? Is he not pushing them enough? Are they just like not motivated themselves? Like what's happening there? Because if you don't have your big guys on the glass, you can't be relying on Keaton and Kylan to crash the boards every time. Especially against when you play a team like Michigan where you got Yaxel, Merez, Mara, like your big guys have to show up. And I think that's something that I want to see more throughout the season. Also defensively from them, just rotating a little bit quicker. We saw that against Missouri. Markovich was a lot better at shifting and just getting to his spots quicker. So if we can see improvement in the front court, I think that'll help a lot to support Wagler and Kylan, who's been pretty consistent this year.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all of those takes. I think Missouri, I don't know if you watch other podcasts or other Illinois like breakdowns, but Mike LaTulip does like a film session, and he
Yep.
had a great one after that Missouri game. He pointed out that it was really the first game the Illini kind of imposed their will defensively. And he said that as a former player, he feels like there's games where you play a game defensively and it goes beyond just having film and watching it, where you start to feel it, and then you're like, this works finally. So that I'm looking at that Missouri game as kind of a turning point. Now I do think Missouri kind of phoned it in a little bit in the second half. They knew they were beat. I think their effort, especially the last 10 minutes of the game, was pretty lackluster, and that's why the Illini were able to beat them by 43 points. But still, I think this was a turning point game for the Illini. But they've had others in the past before, like the Tennessee game, and then they have defensive letdowns like they did against Nebraska. So this team is, as you described, pretty bipolar, but I think that was kind of similar to last year as well. We saw that a lot. Now, Noah, realistically, as a fan, if we're looking at the Illini team right now, where do you think they stack up against the rest of the Big Ten? If we were to simulate 2 months from now, where do you think the Illini finish in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think they're still a really good team. I think they probably would finish third if they can play consistent like they have been, at least with the Missouri game. If they keep playing like they did in the Missouri game, they'll finish third, I think. They could finish first. But yeah, you watch these Michigan games and these Purdue games and they do look pretty good. But I will say, I've been getting in arguments online with people about Braden Smith because I mean, it is what it is. He started the year as the preseason favorite for player of the year, and now he's like maybe number 10. So it's not my fault. He's just not performing as well as he should be. So I do think that there's room at the top. It's not like some stacked. I really don't think Michigan, honestly, I'm so sour on Michigan
You're
because
you're a Michigan hater, man.
I just have beef with Mérez. I mean, it runs deep with him, his dad, the whole Kofi comment. I mean, I just don't want Michigan to succeed. I haven't wanted Michigan to succeed since Juwan Howard slapped Greg Gard in the face. But either way, I do think Illinois is actually starting to gel a little bit, and maybe now that they've had that Missouri win and they know what it feels like to play tough defense and know what it feels like to dominate these teams, maybe they'll start to do it more consistently. I don't know. I mean, you do have Cameron Crocker, it's his first year, so maybe there's just some stuff they have to massage out, gel a little bit better. I mean, if you ask me, I mean, I don't think they're playing terribly. You look at the one game they probably should have won was that Nebraska game, and they lost it on a buzzer beater three. I mean, it is what it is. Nebraska's a really good team. They're going to do that to a lot of teams this year. But the fact that you were able to beat Missouri by so much and go into Ohio State and win, and dude, that Texas Tech game, I thought we were dead in the water that second half when Toppin starts going crazy. I was like, okay, yeah, we're just gonna lose the game, but they didn't. They came back, they won. So I do have some faith in this team. I will say though, I've been very impressed with Big Z. I think that he coming into the year, people were very down on him. I mean, very down. People were like, maybe you'll get 5 to 10 minutes, and if he does play 10 minutes, who's to say it's going to be good? He's been like the leading guy this year in terms of, I mean, obviously Keaton and Merck had some hype in the beginning of the season, but I think consistently game over game, Big Z's giving you solid performances. So I've been very impressed with him. And I just think if Merck can get in his rhythm, can find his rhythm, dude, he's so good. And we already know Keaton is incredible. And I was watching the Field of 68 the other night, and Goodman had this horrible take, which what's new? I mean, all of his takes are pretty bad, but they were like, if you're Illinois, what's one thing you could ask for Christmas? And he's like, oh, send all the Balkans back. We don't want them anymore. It's like, dude, I don't know. I mean, I think they're all playing pretty well, and they're fun. It's camaraderie. They're hanging out and singing weird Balkan songs. And I mean, you would know more than me. I kind of want to get into the inside gossip. Is there somebody on the team that farts a lot? Is there somebody on the team that's like the class prankster? I mean, I just feel like these guys are all really good friends and they care about each other. And now you got Tony Bilic, aka Babasic Ivasic. He is back. He is here now, so that your Balkan ties are even tighter. So I'm positive. I think this team is trending upwards, and I think getting in a Big Ten play, you're going to see a much tighter team.
All right. Now, speaking of Balkans, the one we haven't mentioned so far, we've mentioned Z, we've mentioned Tommy, we've mentioned Merck, we've mentioned Petro, and Tony Bilic. The one we haven't mentioned so far, and Sahil, I'm curious to get your take on this because Noah and I have discussed this before. When Andre is in the lineup, there seems to be some feel amongst Illini fans that he's not a hindrance to the offense, obviously. Like he's one of our best scorers, and if he's going to score 15 to 16 a game, that's a good thing for the Illini. But there's often games where you see, if you look at Andre's best games, they typically are games where the Illini offense hasn't performed very well. And I guess we've needed Andre to score those points, whether we win or lose those games. One of them, I think, was Nebraska, where we obviously lost that game. But there's been an argument that to be made that this lineup is at its most efficient when Andre isn't in the lineup. Firstly, do you agree with that? And then if you do agree with that, or if you don't agree with that, for the rest of the season, how do you think Andre fits into this offense? Because he's not Terrence Shannon Jr. in the sense that like Terrence was just bulldog. He'd grab the rebound and he'd go. Now Andre has a lot of that in him where he finishes at the rim and it's like, how did he get that to go? So he is very physical. He can get to the rim whenever he wants. He often scores kind of flashy layups or tremendous dunks, which I never saw Peja Stojakovic ever do in his NBA career. But I'm curious your take on that because we've talked about it on this podcast before, and I know it's been mentioned on other Illini podcasts. But getting Andre to gel mostly with this team, where do you think his best fit is?
I think that you when he's needed to take over, he has, and like when they've needed him to kind of just go ISO, he has. I mean, they've needed the offense at certain points, especially I think Alabama stands out mostly to me, where they were just super stagnant, especially to start that second half, and he brought the offense that they really needed. I think coming in, everybody expected him to be, obviously your go-to guy, your scorer, but that doesn't always necessarily mean that he has to have the ball in his hands 24/7. And I think the emergence of Keaton kind of being that primary ball handler where the offense is going to be basically run through him at this point. I mean, he's the one dictating everything. Andre is he's that classic wing who can just he can score anywhere. I mean, he's shown he can shoot it. I think against Missouri, what is he, 2 for 4?
Yeah.
I think obviously he can get to the rim. You need him out there. You can it's not something where it's like, oh, he's making the offense bad. Yes, he plays a lot in ISOs. Yes, the ball's in his hands a lot, but I think that I think that now that Keaton is kind of, running everything, he's realizing that he doesn't need to be that guy who's, I'd say directing the offense. It's hard to say just because he is so good at what he does. But it's not. I don't feel like he's, at least from what I've seen in press conferences and him on the court, he doesn't seem cocky at this point. Like he needs the ball in his hands. Like he needs to, be the star of the show. Like when he needs to take a backseat, he can. I'd say I'm fine with how he's been playing and how they've been using him. I really don't think much needs to change. It'd be nice when he does get to the free throw line if he could, make those on a more consistent level, which he did against Mizzou. But I'm fine with it. I don't see what everybody else is saying about him being somebody that is maybe detracting from the offense. I think he's been a great addition to it, and he's fitting in well, I think, with all their other pieces right now.
I think it's more of a historical take, to be honest, because in past years when a significant player has gotten injured, or Terrence Shannon Jr., for example, they had that string of games where they played really tough, and I think they went 5-1 in that stretch without Terrence Shannon Jr. And everybody's like, "Are we better without TSJ?" And then he came back, obviously, and proved the world wrong. And then there was the same thing. This would have been in 2014 or 2015 when Ravonte Rice got injured, and they had a string of games where Kendrick Nunn took over, and it was just like, "Are we better without our best player on the floor?" So.
But that's a good thing. I mean, your team should be deep enough to the point where any of these guys can step up and fill that role. Like, especially when, Brad talks about depth being something that they've focused on, especially last year and this year. Like, you want those guys to be able to step up. And I think that this year you really have that. I mean, when he hasn't played well and some guys haven't played well, you've seen other guys step up. And I think, just just because he's out of the game, or just because he's sorry, my like computer's tweaking right now.
You're all good.
Just because he's like sitting on the bench, or just because he's not playing in a certain game or not playing well, and they play well in those stretches where he's not on the floor. It doesn't mean that he's not, a big contributor to the offense and somebody that shouldn't be on the floor. I think that's a little bit of a take that bothers me a little bit.
You're not subscribing to that one, huh?
No, not at all. I think, this team is deep for a reason. It's there so that when one guy sits, somebody else steps up. And that's how it should be if you're in a top tier program.
I agree with you. I can and remember as a longtime Illini fan, there'd be teams where you'd pull the sixth and seventh guy off the bench, and other than that, nobody else was playing on the Illini. So to have this abundance of wealth where you've got 10 players that can play, and then you've got Petro just sitting on the, we've got a 22-year-old professional Serbian basketball player that hasn't really played that much because the team around him is supposedly just that much better.
And that should tell you a lot
Yeah,
about
I would
him.
agree with you. So anyways, I wanted to clear that up because I know you're pretty close with the team. Now this is just more of a fun question, but there are some exciting games coming up. There are exciting games, there are exciting themes that we're going to be following for the rest of the season. Noah, I'll let you start it off with this one. What are you most excited for the rest of the season?
I would say I'm most excited to see the potential shenanigans that the team gets into. I do want to see the Sage come back. I want to see Kylan bring the Sage back. I don't care if they lost the game last year that he used it. I want to see it. I mean, it's funny. This season at this point has become like a giant meme, and the fact that we're still winning games is incredible because we're winning and everybody's loving it and laughing and posting videos. Oh, what's Illinois going to do next? Oh, they're so wacky. So I'm just excited about what's to come. You got with Andre. I do want to mention, I'm pro Andre. I think he's very, very. I'm just going to say handsome. I'm going to come out and say it.
I'd
I
like
think
to clear, I'm pro Andre too. I don't want anybody, I just had to make that point. I was
well,
playing devil's advocate there. So
he's
we're all
first.
pro Andre.
He's first team all looks. I mean, we know
Yeah.
that, and me and Andre, we kind of have a similar hair situation going on, and we know that at the I don't remember what game it wasn't the bragging rights game, but you did go right next to Peja in the
I,
bathroom, and
yeah, the Alabama game.
yeah,
We
so
did the
so we're
bathroom.
very close with the Stojakovic family. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Andre does because he's one of those guys that you have these other content creators, I'm not going to name any names, Sleepers Media, who always say, oh, Andre, he comes on the floor and he's slow and he's stagnant and he blah 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 blah. Dude, when I watch him slip in the lane sometimes, he's so elusive and he's so quick and he's strong too. I mean, I know he's not as strong as somebody like Terrence, but he really does remind me of Io in the sense that like if you need somebody to come in and get some points, if the rest of the team's lacking, he can come in and he's solid and he's a really nice, friendly, from what I can tell, he's a really friendly guy. You'd probably know a lot more. I mean, again, maybe he's not. Maybe he's a real mean guy. I have no idea. But from what I can tell in the interviews that I'm watching, he seems like a real class act. So I'm looking forward to seeing Andre. I'm looking forward to just keep seeing Big Z evolve. What's he going to smash next? What trophy can he possibly obtain next to destroy? I hope that we can beat Michigan, and I'm very confident that we can beat Michigan. I've been preaching it all year that we have their number. I mean, Daddy Brad, it is what it is at this point. This is the year as well. I think that we can try and get Purdue. I don't think Purdue's as good as they've been historically in the last 5 or so years. So I mean, dude, even if we end up getting like a 5 or a 6 seed, if we can beat Michigan and Purdue, I'd be totally happy with that. It's not all about, winning every single game. It's the experiences, like Michigan football. All they care about is beating Ohio State football. They'd rather beat Ohio State than make it into the playoffs sometimes. So I'm just here for the experience. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to everything.
Very nice. Noah, I'm gonna butt in here and say we're probably going to that Northwestern game in Evanston. So I'm very much looking forward to that because we'll have both of us for the first time ever at a basketball game for the Illini. That'll be exciting. I know the Big Ten tournaments in the United Center this year, so I'm looking to get tickets to that. Obviously, the Illini will play. Well, I mean, actually, not everybody makes the Big Ten tournament anymore. Or did they change that finally? Because last year I know 3 or 4 teams didn't make it.
It's I believe they've changed it to where every team makes it in now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I bought tickets right now, I wouldn't have to be too worried about it. But anyways, I'm looking forward to that because anytime I can actually watch the Illini in person, getting to Champagne's a little tough, but when they have games in Chicago or around Chicago, I always make an effort to try and go to them. So that's what I'm most excited for. But Sahil, do you have what are you looking forward to? I know you're with the team all the time, so you're going to go on some of these trips with them.
Yeah.
Is there anywhere particular that you're like really excited to go or?
I was super excited for Nashville. That was a great time. I got to spend a weekend there. I think UCLA is probably the one that I'm looking forward to most on the road. Pauley Pavilion, it's a great historic arena. UCLA has been, they're going to be in that upper tier of the Big Ten. I think we should beat them right now with how they've been playing. They've also been a little inconsistent. So yeah, I'd say UCLA is probably my most look the road trip I'm looking forward to the
Do
most.
you
But
travel with the team? I mean, is
so it's external media. So the student newspaper pays for everything, flights, hotels. Well, they didn't used to. This is something new that started last year when I started covering the team. We started really pushing for a travel budget. And so we've gotten a good amount of money this year to travel to a lot of these big games. But I'd say the home game, I think Michigan is the biggest one. Not even just from the Mraz perspective, but how does our front court going into March match up with theirs? I mean, Yaxel, Mara, Mraz versus T, Merck, Z, like just the physicality aspect. I think that that's going to be a huge challenge, and if we're not kind of up to the task at that point, that should be a little bit of a warning sign heading into March when you're going to play a lot of those more physical teams, especially at the end of the Big Ten tournament or in the first couple rounds of March Madness. Like your front court has to be up to par by then. I think that'll be a really good kind of test to see, where we're at that point. Um,
That game's going to be real physical too. I mean, oh my gosh, if somebody doesn't get ejected from that game, I mean, I'm expecting Big Z to hit somebody. Dude, if Big Z posters Merez and then chirps him and then gets ejected, I'm totally fine with that. I mean, I think Brad would be okay with that too. I mean,
and and
there's going to be a Pizza Hut parking lot game. All right, that's all I'm saying.
and I think that's a game where, you kind of have to, if you're Illinois, you kind of have to prove that what you were saying in that whole, transfer period
Mhm.
was right. I mean, you guys put your faith in Merck and getting Z, and keeping Ben, and you kind of you let Perez walk for better or for worse. I mean, yes, he wanted more, and he made the decision to leave, but it's in part because you were putting money behind other guys. And so now when you have a chance to show, that your money's worth its while, like you got to do it. You don't really have a choice. And so I think that would be a little bit awkward almost if they get destroyed by Michigan there. But I'm really looking forward to that. I just hope Merck and Z are up to the task of being physical because they're going to need it.
Yeah, and I'm not a Michigan fan, Noah, and I know you would, but Michigan looks so scary right now. They're beating everybody by 40. So the most I can hope for at this point is we don't get beat by 20 on our own home court against Michigan. But
I mean,
there's a lot of times.
they've looked scarier in previous years. I mean, that Iowa year, weren't they like the best team in the country when we went into Michigan and won? Do you remember that?
I mean, they were up there, but this team, they weren't. This team reminds me of the UConn team that beat everybody in the tournament by 15 or 20 points. But
No. I'm not buying it. I'm just not buying the Wolverines this year. I'm down on the Wolverines. What can I say? Down on Dusty.
all right, man. I mean, I hope you don't have to eat your words with that, but that game's a while away. So they do have some games to get it together before then. Not that they need to get it together after that Missouri game, but now Noah and I have talked about this before on the podcast. I've mentioned it a few times, but there is a pretty opportunistic stretch run the Illini have coming up. Let me pull up their schedule here. But I believe obviously Southern we're chalking down as a win. But up until the Purdue game on January 24th, they've got a string of Penn State at Penn State, Rutgers at Iowa, which is always a tough game, at Northwestern, which the Illini always seem to struggle with, then at home versus Minnesota, at home versus Maryland, and then away versus Purdue. Now, before that Purdue game, I know I just rattled off, what was it, 7 games? I've said before that if the Illini lose one of these games, it would be pretty alarming. I think this is the period of time in the Big Ten where if they want to assert to everybody else that they're going to be a top three Big Ten team, you need to win all of these games, especially because they lost that Nebraska game early on.
Yeah, I think that, obviously they've had some issues. I think it was USC last year
Mhm.
where, you know, they lost right after destroying Penn State just a couple days before. So this is a time of year where, you know, inconsistency has been an issue the first half of the season. This is a time of year where you need to prove that it's not anymore and you need to string together those wins. I think Penn State should be something that you just need to take care of. Rutgers, again, take care of that. Iowa will be should be your first real test of that stretch. Um, but if they play how they played against Mizzou, it shouldn't be an issue. This team is very simple. The offense is going to fire, and if the defense doesn't, then they lose a lot more games than they should. And it's just a matter of fact of getting that defensive energy up to the par that the offensive energy is at. Northwestern's always a tough one. I think last year gave me a little bit of a heart attack with uh, seeing how those last few minutes of the second half played out and then overtime,
Yeah.
because that was a very winnable game. But Northwestern's always a tough one on the road. Minnesota and Maryland should be able to take care of those. And then at Purdue's, of course, going to be really tough. Mackey, I'm excited to experience that for the first time this year. That's another afternoon game, so we know how Illinois has performed in those, but it's a good stretch. It's a good stretch of games. They really have a chance to kind of set the tone here and get a bunch of wins under their belt before they don't really see anybody great until Purdue.
Mhm.
And then the rest of their schedule is also laid out really, really well. I'd say the only really tough stretch for the rest of it is um, going out to the West Coast for USC and UCLA, and then I mean you have a week off before Michigan. So, if Brad stands behind those, we need those weeks of practice to kind of get back on track. You have that before Michigan. So I think the schedule's laid out really nicely. It's just a matter of not getting lazy or lackadaisical like early on in early January when you have a lot of these teams that should be easy wins if you play smart.
Yeah. And then so we're getting into the middle of that Big Ten season with the Purdue game. That'll fall January 24th, as I said. Now, this is one of those questions I'm going to ask you because you're with the team, and I know you're at practices sometimes and you're in the locker room sometimes. If reports are true, there have been reports that Ty Rodgers is potentially returning this year and potentially will be back by the middle of January. Now, before the bragging rights game, I saw him warming up with the team, and he looked like a guy that didn't have a knee injury 4 months ago, especially as I think it was a torn patellar tendon, which is a pretty significant knee injury. I know Victor Cruz had that at one point and it sidelined him for an entire NFL season. So, uh, is there any truth to the rumors that Ty might be back this season? And if so, I know from 2 years ago when he played, he really brought defensive intensity to this team and rebounding, which is something I think if we could if we could ask Santa Claus for what we want for Christmas from the Illini, those are two of the things that everybody would have on their list. So, firstly, is there any truth to the rumor that he might be back this year? How has he looked in practice if you've been able to watch him at all? I know you can't admit there might be rules against this, so don't exploit yourself and get yourself in any trouble if you're
Yeah,
not
do you have
allowed.
an NDA? Did they make you sign anything?
So the practice whenever we go to practice, it's always the first like 15 minutes or the last whenever we get the guys for media availability. So I haven't really been able to watch a ton of practice. Have been able to watch Ty a lot before the doors open to fans. I'll say this, he's been extremely active just in pregame warmups, like offering some coaching, some advice. He's been in drills since the beginning of the year, at least just like light dribbling, some passing. Nothing crazy though. Uh, I think bragging rights is probably the first time I really saw him get super, super active on that knee. I tweeted out a video that got like
Oh, it was your video that I
yeah,
saw.
it got like 50,000 views. So a lot of people were just like speculating on, oh, is he going to be back? Is he not going to be back? I So Brad hasn't said anything about him coming back, and I don't think he will come back. Um, I know that Brad said he's doing some light jogging. Obviously, he's shooting that kind of stuff. But do they really need him this year? At this point, it's like, yeah, he's another big guard who can play defense, who can rebound. The question is, can he shoot it? Can he shoot it yet? Um, but bringing him in, let's say he comes back in February. If, like, I'm not saying that that's gonna happen, but if it does happen, do they really need him? I mean, you've got Keaton kind of playing at an extremely high level. You've got Kylan playing that like defensive guard type role. I guess like let's say one of them gets injured, yeah, Ty could be useful, but then he burns a year. He should burn a year of eligibility.
That's
Uh,
what I was gonna say. What's the
so
eligibility thing with that? I mean, because does he have 2 years of eligibility extra now? Because he didn't play last year either. So I mean, is
yeah,
he
he
gonna
didn't play
be?
last year. So technically, if he played this year, it'd be his junior year. So he'd have two seasons. But if he doesn't play this year, then he's got two more seasons on top of sitting out the last 2 years. And so I'm almost like, if you think he'll stick around, that is an extremely valuable piece to have. And
I
I
think he
wouldn't,
will stick around
yeah.
too because he stuck around last year and everything was pointing towards him not sticking around and he stuck around and I think that he honestly does like this team a lot and the
He
coaching staff.
He not even just the team. He loves the community. I talked to him at a basketball camp that he was working at in April last year because he hadn't really released any statements on why he was coming back. He just said he was coming back, and so I asked him like, what was the biggest reason? Obviously, because I think Murray's leaving had to play a role with it because he would be able to play that rebounder, physical defender type role since Murray's was gone. But he just loves this community, man. He's all for the kids. All the kids are wearing Ty Rodgers jerseys. He's volunteering at camps. He talks to people before games, just hangs out with them. He's a good guy. And somebody that I don't think is, all in it for, just a quick buck or whatever. So I do think he'll stick around, and if the program feels that way, I'm sure they'll pay him what he's worth, especially being a veteran guy who's been around and been loyal for so many years. And I just wouldn't burn any eligibility because I believe he would lose a year. I mean, if he plays almost half the season,
Yeah.
I just don't think they need him unless something happens between now and February where Keaton or Kylan goes down, God forbid. But just because I don't think they don't have the faith in Mahalo to step up and really, play 20, 25 minutes a game at this point, which is a little bit concerning. But yeah, I don't think he'll come back this year, not necessarily because he isn't ready, but because it just wouldn't make sense for him eligibility wise. But yeah, he's looking really good. He was moving really well. Looked like he was playing full pace defensively. He was making hard stops, jumping. So I'm optimistic, and it looks like it's healing well at least.
Yeah, I mean, so it was your video that I saw actually, believe it or not, because I remember looking at the stamp and I was like, oh, we're gonna have this guy on the podcast in a few days. But yeah, that video you sent out, for a guy that when did he get injured officially? It was the spring, right?
It was
Or was it summer?
It
no,
was
it
the
was over the
summer.
summer. It was over the
Yeah.
summer because I saw him in April and he was totally fine.
I mean that's kind of wild to me. Like you think of a knee injury, like a torn ligament in your knee, you would think keeps you out a full year. And 6 months later, I mean, not full speed, but he's cutting and he was jumping in that video. So I
Yeah,
was
I mean
really
the scar on his knee is pretty significant. I saw it at
okay.
media day.
I
It's
know
it's
he has
big.
a brace on it usually, so that's some insider knowledge that we wouldn't be able to tell otherwise. But at this point, I don't know how long both of you guys have been following Illinois basketball for, but he's giving me very much shades of like Tracy Abrams, and he just kept coming back and getting injured. And then Tracy Abrams, I think he played like 6 years at Illinois. Two of them were like redshirt seasons, but I hope he sticks around. I was kind of hopeful he'd play this year, but I do agree with you. Just not sure where there's room for him besides just the fact that like when he did play 2 years ago, he was so strong on defense, especially for a freshman. So if he brings that back, I would love to see it on the court. But if he's gonna come back next year, I'd rather have him saved for next year because I think he'll be a veteran next year. He'll be a big benefit to this team, especially with a bunch of young guys coming in. But before we get into next year at all, I want to finish up this podcast just by wrapping it up with um, kind of predictions for it's going to be a while away in March, and God forbid anything goes terribly wrong and the Illini don't make their, what would this be, the sixth or seventh consecutive tournament they've made now. But I'm expecting them to make the tournament. Now, I'd like to get your guys' take on, well, just saying that feels like a jinx, so I'm going to knock on wood here. But assuming they make the tournament, where would you guys predict that they fall in terms of seeding? Right now, it looks like a 3 or 4, leaning maybe a 4 or 5, but it could be if they take care of business and win the games I think they should win. I would argue they could be as high as a 2. But what do you guys think? I'll start with you, Sahil.
Yeah, I think right now this is a 4 seed team. They haven't proved that they're consistent enough or that they can string together the types of games that they need to in order to get that 3 seed. I mean, if you look back, that TJ Coleman Marcus Quincy team was a 3 seed. And I think that if they, if this first stretch of Big Ten play kind of goes well for them and they don't really lose one of the ones that they shouldn't, and then maybe they play Purdue really tightly or they, maybe beat Purdue or Michigan or play them super tightly, I think that pushes them up to a 3 seed. If they lose one or two, maybe 3 games that they're not supposed to, I think that then you drop down into that 5 range. I think this team is better than last year. I don't think they're a 6 seed. Um, right now, based off the Mizzou and the Tennessee games, I'd say there are three, maybe a four. Uh, but if they don't play if they're not consistent the rest of the year out, they drop to that kind of end of the four, early five range. But I think their ceiling is probably around a three. I just don't see them breaking into that two range with Duke and with Houston and those other programs.
They'd have to win some. They'd have to like beat Purdue and
Yeah,
Michigan
by
State.
sizable amounts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Noah, do you agree with that feeling, or are you more optimistic, less optimistic?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think when we beat Michigan, and yes, when we beat Michigan, not if. I'm speaking it into existence. It's called manifestation. When we beat Michigan, I do think the national media will look at us differently because they're the team that right now everybody, every media channel is talking about Michigan. They're glazing Michigan. Oh my gosh, oh. So that's going to be a game that boosts us into relevancy again. Because Illinois, lately we've been a team, we're very consistent, but we just can't find ourselves in that upper echelon of teams. And so we're one of those teams where, going into March, nobody's really afraid of Illinois anymore. So hopefully this team, and like I said earlier, I think they're trending upwards. I think they're playing better. I think that they're starting to find their rhythm with everybody. And I think that we'll be able to probably get a 3 or a 4 seed. I mean, I don't think we'll fall any further than that. But like you guys were saying, I don't necessarily see us being a 1 or a 2 seed unless we essentially, yeah, win out and lose a few games here and there. But really, it's going to come down to the Big Ten tournament. If we show up to the Big Ten tournament and get bounced in the first round or second round, it's not like last year. It's not gonna fare well for us. So we got to be consistent all year, and we got to show up in the tournament. And like you guys were saying, we got to pick up one of those two wins, preferably the Michigan win, since it's at home, right? It's at Illinois, and so you'd have to assume that, as much as I hate Purdue, I don't think we're going to beat them. I never think that we're going to beat Purdue. They just have our number. It's kind of like how we are with Michigan. So I do think that they'll probably finish a 3 seed is my prediction.
That second game against Nebraska this season too in Lincoln is going to be huge. I think if Illinois loses that one in kind of a similar way, that hurts them a lot. But if they go in and they win kind of convincingly, that'll help a lot and just show growth. I think that's the biggest thing, especially to people who are trying to figure out seeding and all that. Just growth is huge, and that Nebraska game is going to be a super important one to win, even though it may not look like it on the schedule.
That one's on February 1st. Okay, so like middle of the Big Ten season. But that's a good point there because if you show you lost at home by 3 and then you go to Nebraska and beat them by 10 or 11, obviously, like you said, that shows growth. It shows the people who are seeding these teams that the Illini have come a far ways from their loss against Nebraska on December 13th. But they'll still have quite a few important Big Ten games after that as well. So, anyways, guys, that actually, I'm going to drop one more on you before we wrap this up real quick. Uh, if there was a result, so say the Illini season ended today, where's the line between this season was a success and this season was a complete failure? Sahil, I'll start with you there. I would argue you got to make it to the Sweet 16. That was, I mean, the last time. Or I'm sorry, I think you got to make the Elite Eight. You got to make at least as far as the Terrence Shannon Jr. team went. There was all this talk about how this team might be even better than that team at the beginning of the year. So I would argue this team would be a success or a successful season if they made it to the Elite Eight. But what about you guys?
Yeah. I don't think necessarily the Elite Eight. I just think the second weekend is a success, getting a little bit further than last year. I think that Terrence Shannon team was just special, and I don't think obviously the Elite Eight is where you want to be. You want to get there in the Final Four, but I think just making it to the second weekend would be really good, especially if inconsistency is still an issue the rest of the season and somehow you make it to the Sweet 16, great. But if you play really well the rest of the year and you're consistently beating teams like how you beat Missouri and you don't make it to the Elite Eight, then that's a little bit of a disappointment. But I think honestly, if this team plays how they did against Mizzou and they kind of bring that intensity on both sides of the ball, and that's the key. You got to find the defense as well as the offense. That's been their issue all year, just having one or the other. This is a Final Four caliber team. They can do it. I'm not saying that they will, but they have the firepower to do it. Now the question is, can they find the consistency to do so? So I'd say second weekend is probably makes this season a success. Uh, if you make it to the Elite Eight, I'd say that's kind of the cherry on top and anywhere further. But then if you also look at it from a pro perspective, this program is going to put out multiple pros this year. Um, and I'd say not even just getting them to the pros, but the development from year one to year two, like Kylan last year to this year and then going pro, like did this year help him? Did this year help Tommy? And that's one of the big questions I have. Can Tommy really find um, that next level in the second half of the season? I think that'll also be part of their success and a measure of success. I mean, the NBA and the G League and college are all kind of meshing together now. So I think you have to not only put tournament success as kind of like a metric of how a program did, but how are their players, getting to the next level? I think that's also a big metric. So just seeing how Tommy does the rest of the year and if he can make that jump to getting drafted is also something I would really watch out for to see if this program is kind of where it needs to be and trending in the right direction.
Noah?
Yeah, it's very interesting, when you talk about Illinois and you talk about these NBA potential players. I mean, it makes me think of last year when, everybody was saying, "Oh, we got 15 guys." They're looking at Kerry Booth, so but I do think that legitimately this team does have a lot of guys that could make the league. I think Keaton, I'd be very, very surprised if he's back in college next year. I just think he's going to get drafted probably top 15 this year. So I think he's gone. I think honestly, if Andre keeps playing well, he's probably gone. I mean, that he's one of those players that teams know his name. They are familiar with his game. They want him. He's gonna bring the headlines. Oh, could you imagine Andre in Miami? I mean, him and
Sure.
Kasparis, dude, they would go crazy down there. So and with Kylan, obviously this is his last year, so I think he's going to find his way on a G League team, and he's certainly got the skill to work his way into the league and just be a rotation player off the bench or something like that. Honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing Big T and Big Z come back for another year. I think that the way Tommy's been playing lately, maybe he's not going to get drafted in the first round. And at this day and age, if you're not getting drafted in the first round, you might as well come back to college, make, a lot of money and have probably a lot more fun than playing in the G League. So, but in order of success, yeah, I think second weekend for sure. If, you look at last year's team, I don't think last year's team was a failure by any means. I think some of the fans would look at it and say, "Oh, it was terrible." But, we won the first game and we lost to a solid Kentucky team. I mean, it is what it is. I do think in that Terrence Shannon year, we got a little bit lucky with those first two games. You could argue that we got very unlucky with the UConn game, but we also did get very lucky with the Duquesne and whoever the hell we played in the first round. But yeah, I think that if this team can make a second weekend, and at least show up in that Sweet 16 game and not get bounced, and routed by 40 points to UConn or someone like that's really where the seasons can get depressing because when you look back at that Terrence Shannon Jr. year, the fans, of course, remember it great. We're like, oh, that was a great season, probably the best season we've had in decades. But from an outsider's perspective, oh yeah, that's the year they got bounced by UConn by 30 points and there was like a 40-0 run, so you got to have solid performances in March, and if you lose a close buzzer beater game to Duke or someone in the Sweet 16 or Elite Eight, then okay, it is what it is. But yeah, I do agree. I think a second weekend would be crucial for these guys.
And it'll be exciting that the perspective of them making it to the second weekend because at least I'm fairly certain one of the regional sites, at least this year, is the United Center as well.
Yeah.
My
Yep.
dad and I were discussing like beginning of the season buying tickets, and I told him I was like, "That's the biggest jinx of all time." So just hold off on that until at least they make it to the tournament. So, but there's the perspective and the possibility of the Illini playing in Chicago if they do make it past the Sweet 16. So that's exciting to watch out for. That's really all I have for this roundtable on this podcast. Sahil, I just wanted to say thank you again for joining us. It's really a privilege to have like your insider knowledge here with us. So thank you for joining us, man. I really appreciate taking an hour of your time on an NFL Sunday and sitting down and talking Illini basketball with us. But thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, and hopefully this season turns out how we all hope.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the rest of it. Like we said, they got Southern tomorrow at 2 p.m., so hopefully we'll breeze through that one. And for our listeners, this is going to be our first podcast we're putting on Spotify and Apple Music. So if you prefer to listen to it just with audio instead of recording and video as well, you can do so on Spotify and Apple Music.
Apple Podcasts, not Apple Music.
Oh, is it Apple Podcasts? Okay, I don't use Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, so I have to familiarize myself with all that. But either way, if you want to listen to it in that format, you can do so after this one. But once again, Sahil, thank you for being here. ILL, Noah, it was great to have you again too.
Oh, no, baby.